She founded an architectural concrete company.
He founded a $100 million clothing company.
She took the world by storm as a social media star.
He took the world by storm as a famous serial entrepreneur.
Together we started a business.
And had babies.
Now we're figuring out the best ways to do both.
Join us as we learn from other entrepreneurs going through the same life struggles.
As they share their life hacks about success, love, kids,
and everything in between.
Hey, Pat. So good to have you on this episode of the Pretty and Punk Show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Really excited.
I appreciate you taking. I know I kind of asked you on the spot, but we've been watching you for a long time. You're actually the very first podcast we ever downloaded. You and Entrepreneur on Fire were the two podcasts that we knew about when we first jumped on.
And we planned to do this entrepreneurial podcast for years and years and years, and things got in the way. And it wasn't until we had kids that we decided to go through with it. We're facing a major life challenge, and everybody was telling us how perfect our life looked. And I said, we got to pull back the curtains.
People got to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And so
that's what's so great about podcasting. We can go deep. We're going to tell stories. I'm so grateful that you guys started a podcast, especially in that time. And I'm sure you've gotten vulnerable and your audience loves you for it.
It was a lot of your push, honestly. Just listening to you talk and speak about how great a podcast is for anybody who's trying to get their message out there. And so honestly, it's a really a big treat having you on the show.
Yeah. And your transparency and your focus on bringing people so much value.
Thank you.
So why don't we start? We both love your story, and it really speaks to what's going on here in the world. You know, people are going through exactly what you've went through in the past.
The nightmare of losing the job, the nightmare of facing the pivot, and it's so scary for so many people, and they feel like it's the end, when really it could be the beginning and the biggest blessing, like it was for yourself.
So right. That's so true. So to tell you the story real quick, I went to school for architecture. In fact, even before then, I had done everything perfect, the way I was supposed to, right? 4.0 grade point average, went to UC Berkeley, graduated magna cum laude, got this amazing job in the Bay Area as an architect, and my life was set, right? I was like retirement accounts, like everything was planned. And of course, as Mike Tyson says, plans are okay until somebody gets punched in the mouth. And that's exactly what happened, right? And I, on June 17th, 2008, I got let go. And it was a massive blow. I had no plan B. I thought I had this secure job, and I didn't. And again, 2008, a recession, and millions of people losing their job. Like today, millions of people losing their job for a different reason, but very similar feel. And I remember falling into a deep, dark hole, not really knowing what I was going to do, questioning whether or not I was good enough, questioning if my fiance was going to care about like that and like things were different, or if I was letting my parents down. I was begging and pleading to come back. And I was calling other architecture firms, just like, I'll take an executive position. Like, I don't care. I don't know any other thing other than this. Like, I have to come back. And honestly, the only thing that made me feel better was watching Back to the Future, like literally over and over and over again. I don't know why, but I love that movie. And, for that 1 hour and 56 minutes, you can kind of believe that maybe there's a time machine and you can go back and change things and come back and everything will be better. And that's kind of what I hope would happen. But obviously after that movie's over, it's like, oh, back to reality.
Right.
And although that's a fictional story, there is some truth to the fact that, how Marty goes back in the past, changes a few things, and then his whole future is rewritten. And although we can't go back into the past, we are writing our future right now. Like, we get to choose the story that we want to happen. And I decided at that point that I was going to do something about it. So I was very grateful to have discovered a podcast at this time. This is why I love podcasts. A podcast literally changed my life. Right. It was called Internet Business Mastery. And I heard an interview, and it was this guy, his name was Cornelius, and he was making 6 figures a year helping people pass the project management exam, like a super nerdy exam that I have no idea what it's about. Well, it's about project management, but like I didn't know its use or anything. But I remember as an architect, I was passing all these exams to try and be an architect. And there was one in particular that there wasn't a lot of information for, that I was like, you know what? I could kind of maybe do what this guy did. So I built a website, Eventually Google found it. People started sharing it around. I started to spend hours and hours a day, forums and groups and stuff, helping people. And then at the end of the year, I ended up launching a study guide on this new website. And the first month that I launched it, I made $7,908.55, which was just like unreal to me. That was 2.5 times more, right?
Wow.
Absolutely mind blowing. But then like those feelings started coming in from joy and excitement to, what if they're going to ask for a refund? What if they sue me? What if the FBI is going to come? What if I end up like naked in a ditch somewhere? Like our brains do this crazy thing where when we're trying something new, we think of the worst case scenario. I'm very grateful that I had a lot of encouragement from my fiance, now wife, from some mentors that I found at the time. I think that's so important to have. And I pushed through, and I had built another website to help people learn what I was doing called Smart Passive Income, which is where most people know me from now. And I then added a podcast. I've written books. I'm speaking on stages now. I have a YouTube channel, and the podcast has had over 65 million downloads. And it's just kind of mind blowing now that during this time when people are suffering and they need help, they're coming to me to go, what can I do? You've been through this before. So that's kind of what I feel like my role is now, is to show people that times can be tough, but it's about the possibilities that are ahead. Like, what does this pandemic make possible now? Not like, what is this stopping you from doing, but what does this start you to do from this point forward? And again, I'm just grateful that I'm here to share this message even more. And that's my story. And, you know, I didn't sign up for this, but I'm so grateful. Honestly, the best thing that happened to me was getting laid off. This terrible time in my life pushed me into places that I didn't even know existed.
You know, it's so true. It's so hard at that moment to see out past that, you know, because you're in the middle of that storm. It's so hard to see out past that. What did that feel like when you got fired? And I know, I remember, if I remember correctly, I think you had to move home with your parents.
Yeah.
What did that feel like going through that? And how did that weigh on your relationship with your wife? Because you had just got married at that time, didn't you?
No.
Yeah, well, we were engaged.
You were engaged.
And
okay.
but so we were getting married, and you know, part of the reason why we moved back home with our parents was so we could save money for the wedding and all that stuff.
Right.
But you know, you're so right. You don't know from the outside what it feels like because you're just so bottled in, and when the emotions come in, logic goes out the window, and you're just feeling it. Right. As they say, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. And I was definitely bottled up. That's for sure. So my initial, like, let me take you through my sort of iterations of feelings. Right. So from the moment my boss told me I was let go, it was anger, frustration, confusion. Like in my head, I just wanted to like lift the desk up and like thrash the office.
Yeah.
And then of course, back to reality, I leave quietly and I go to my desk and I start questioning whether it was my fault. Right. Even though it wasn't at all. No. I start wondering, well, what could I have done better? Why me? And I start to feel nervous about now I'm starting to get back a little logic, but my logic is like, well, does this mean now my fiance is not going to want to be with me anymore? Because now things aren't the way they were when we signed on this together. And of course, that's a worst case scenario. And she was very supportive. I'm very grateful for her because she was definitely the thing that lifted me up during this dark time. Amen. But I also started thinking, okay, maybe I can go back and get another job. And this is when I started calling all those people and begging, and then just kind of feeling lost, just lost, no direction, and just wondering what life was going to be like. And then of course, as a person who is trying to succeed, who is doing everything perfect before, having to move back in with your parents is like the last thing you want to do. Right. And grateful that they were very supportive. They're like, you always have a place. And I'm failing right now. Like I'm going backwards. I want to move forward. So although I didn't like being back at home because that was moving backwards, I think that forced me to do things that I wouldn't normally have done. Right. It was like, I need to get out of here. So I'm going to do things that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable, but I'd much rather try and see what happens versus like do nothing and stay here. Right. And I often say, like, I'd much rather live a life full of oh wells than a life full of what ifs.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So true. You know, I had a lot of, I think when we first met, I was going through some stuff too, because I had just sold my company and I was leaving, and, you know, that was my identity for 15 years, being this entrepreneur and owning this company. And all of a sudden it's gone. And I attribute her strength a lot to me getting through those times, like, telling me that I could, you can go start something else. You can do something better. Let's build something bigger. And we were going, and then all of a sudden we had a kid. But a lot of those things, happen when you're building that relationship. What was it that you saw in your wife?
Yes. What qualities? Because obviously you had to see something before this. I mean, you guys have 2 kids now, and she's a huge player in this
she's a rock for you. I've heard you say a couple times that how
you can't do it without her,
right? And that she's
totally
really the champion of the family.
Yeah. And we have a lot of single moms, and we have a lot of people that are just doing their due diligence listening to the show. So for our audience that are looking for that soulmate and that power couple, relationship,
Right.
what did you see? Like, how did you know? Tell us.
That's a great question. It's important to have somebody who compliments you, not compliments you like, oh, you look good today. I mean, that's great too.
Right.
But somebody who really fills in the gaps that you are not in.
Yes.
I am somebody who often can overextend myself. I can get too hard on myself, all those kinds of things. And she is somebody who can see it again from outside the bottle to tell me, no, that's not true. And you'll be okay. And everything's going to be fine. And really, like, I remember when I got laid off, I went back to my apartment. She was getting back from work, came and visited me, and I was just bawling. I was crying. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I started apologizing. She came up to me. She gave me a hug, and all she did for like the next 30 minutes was just said, I'm going to be here. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. Right. And that's when I knew. That's when I was like, okay, like all of the worst case scenarios, those are never going to happen because we have each other. We're going to support each other. And that's really key. We actually went to high school together, in fact. So we knew each other. We were friends, but we were not dating in high school because she was 2 grades older than me. And, girls don't date boys that are younger in high school. You get voted off the island if that happens. So we got together afterwards, but we knew each other. I think her big superpower is her loyalty. She will go to at bat for you no matter what, if you've proven that you are there to support her too. She is a 6 on the Enneagram scale. So she's not somebody who is like looking for the whole world to look at her and tell her praises. She just wants it from the few core friends that she has and her close family. And I really love that. And me being a 3, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, which means I am fueled by recognition. And that can go both ways, right? You can be big-headed and cocky about it, or you can use that to inspire you to help more people. And that's where I try to land. And where I also love April is she once told me when I was starting to get big, she was like, hey, if your head grows too big, I'm not going to be there to hold it anymore. And I'm so grateful she said that because, I can, again, potentially fall into that place. And having a person there to see on the outside who I can trust, who will give it to me straight, who I love and who loves my kids, and we want to grow together as a family and dream together and experience together. It's just great. So the answer to how do you find your soulmate, I think that, you do have to be vulnerable at times because you don't know how people will be when you're at your hardest times. A lot of times we think somebody is a certain way, but until you really know if they're going to stick around, even when times are tough, that's kind of how I think you really know.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah, no, I found one too. I got my rock over here too.
And speaking of remarkable children, you guys are raising remarkable children.
Thank you.
We were listening to a few of your podcasts and in YouTubes, and they have this they understand entrepreneurship better than most.
Yeah, we can tell you're teaching them a lot, and I think even our kids get inspired. Our son's 4 years old, but just listening to him, he gets excited about it.
Yeah,
and he's always talking about a podcast. We know at one point you had a podcast with your son, which was great.
Yeah.
But how did you guys decide to raise your children? How did you get them into this life of entrepreneurship and understanding that when you have to work, that you're not taking away from the family, you're bringing to the family?
This is a great question because I remember when I grew up, my dad was gone a lot. He was gone at the 9 to 5. So work equals dad is not at home with him. And sometimes he would be going off to the Pentagon to like spend 3 months. So, work again, taking dad away, right? So work to me when I was a kid equals not family time. And a lot of how both April and I raise our children are based on the things that didn't make us feel great when we were kids. And we both love our parents, bless them, but there were certain things that we definitely don't want to do with our kids. And one of those things is having work feel like it's something that's separate and takes us away from them. And I'm very grateful that I have a business that allows me to run my business from home on my own time, because not only can I just like step outside these doors and I can be with my family right away, and I can create my own schedule, but I can also get them involved too. And I get them involved however they want to get involved, right? Like you think about people who maybe they work from home and then, you know, I don't know if you remember this very viral video, but a guy was on BBC, he was doing an interview and then the kid comes in.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
pretending
We talk
that
about
they're
that
not
all the time.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
so hilarious. Like such real life right there, right? But like, not that this person didn't handle it well. He was trying to be professional and whatnot. But you know, for me, I'm like, hey, come on, like let's introduce, like let's. I let my kids touch all the buttons. If they want to touch all the buttons, here are all the buttons, and here's what they do. Here, get behind the microphone, like play around with it. I remember where they're supposed to be. Like it's not like no, don't touch that, right? It's like, come in, look at all this cool stuff. Like let's put you on camera. Here's what this thing does, and here's what this thing does. Whenever I go to speak somewhere, I tell the kids where I'm going, and I tell them who I'm speaking in front of and why that's important. I get down on their level and I say, you know what? I'm speaking in Philadelphia this week in front of 5,000 people. But the coolest part is that there are people there who need help because I have learned how to do podcasting and they want to do it too. And the cool thing about podcasting is you can help spread your message out there. So I'm going there to help them. And it's going to be really fun. And maybe one day I'll get to take you too. But at least when I'm gone, it's not like, oh, he's just gone. It's like, oh yeah, he's helping people with podcasting over there. So now they're seeing somebody in the family demonstrate serving first, right? And then so I take care of like just demonstrating through leading by example, but never ever are we like, you need to be an entrepreneur. If they don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's up to them. But we just want to show them options, right?
Yes.
You could do whatever. Here are the things that you could do versus you're going to be a doctor, right? Which was like how we grew up, right? Oh, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be, you know, you're kind of like predetermined what you're supposed to be. And how in the world could you, like, one of the worst questions I think is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Daniel. I don't like that question. And the reason I don't like that question, I mean, it's fun to hear what a kid says, right?
Right.
But it's almost like, oh, you need to know exactly your life plan right now.
Yeah.
When like, how does a kid even know what is even possible, what even their strengths are, what they like, what they don't like? We're already telling them sort of what they want to be. And we know, and you know, especially in Asian culture, my wife and I are both Filipino. I'm half Filipino, but it's very much like you're going to be a nurse, right? Like when you're born, either that or you're going to work at the postal office. It's just like, that's what you do. I don't know. It's just, it's stereotypical, but it's, I mean, it is in that culture. I mean, if you watched Joe Coy on Netflix comedy, he's Filipino. He jokes about it all the time because it is a real thing. Yeah. It's like, dream? What dream? No, we tell you what to do. So again, we just want to show options, and also my wife's been doing an amazing job because we do have money. We're doing really well, yet she's still, we don't have, and I'm not saying people who do this are bad or anything, but just like she wants to show them that hard work matters, right? So she's cleaning the house, she's doing the laundry, she's doing all these things that she doesn't have to demonstrate for the kids so that they can appreciate those things when they happen, whether they choose to hire somebody or not. If they do get a mate in the future, great. Now they'll have an appreciation for all that person does and not just take advantage of them, right? So again, my wife's been doing an amazing job there. A lot of times we parent in a way where maybe it's not traditional, but for example, like we try not to helicopter as much as possible. We try to get them to figure things out. And my favorite way to parent is to essentially coach. And any good coach helps a person by not telling them what to do, but by asking them questions so they figure it out themselves, right? 100%. It's almost the equivalent of like, you know, if I want my kids to eat vegetables, I'm not going to be like, here, eat this broccoli. We have a garden in the back and we help them grow the food. And they are so much more likely to eat it when they've been involved in the process themselves, right?
That's so great.
And so we kind of do in like Inception, right? Like, because we as parents know sort of what's best for our kids in many cases, but we don't just want to be like, oh, go do this.
Right.
We might ask questions like, you know, if, for example, we want them to clean their room or something like that, right? We might say, instead of just go clean your room, we might say, well, what do you think might happen if the room gets too messy? what might like we use that phrase all the time, what
Right.
might, or those kinds of things, so that they go, well, I might have to wake up to go to the bathroom, I might trip and fall or something.
Right.
Like, exactly right. So what do you think a good solution might be that we can do now so that that doesn't happen later? Well, I guess I should clean my room then. Okay. And we're just like, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, that's so great to look at it like that. We try to do that too. We're not,
Mhm.
I mean,
Well, they're so young still, so
Yeah.
you can mentor us through it.
yeah, we're
What we
we're
call
definitely, we've heard that note, and we found out when we heard that, we were like, oh, we do that sometimes.
yeah.
So we just, let's keep doing that.
Yeah,
And being
for sure.
Yeah.
transparent about our jobs and what we do, and really guiding them when we see that passion in their eyes. We definitely try to lead them to what interests
totally.
them.
Yeah, and they're
Totally. Why
they're
fight it?
learning
That,
too.
like,
He's
and-
going to start a
and-
podcast soon, I think.
Dude, that's so dope. I can't wait to listen to it. And kids are very curious too, right? Like, they ask why all the time.
Mhm.
Why do you
Yes.
think they're asking why? Because they want to understand, right? They
Mhm.
want to learn more. And when I was a kid, I asked why. It would just be like, that's the way it is. And that doesn't
No,
teach me
yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is a struggle as a parent when you keep getting that question. So we try really hard to, like, inform. And when we tell the kid, when there are moments when we tell the kids to do something, we always have a why behind it. There's always a reason, right? Like, go tie your shoes. Why? Well, tie your shoes yourself so you can understand how to save time, so you are not affecting other people's lives who have to do it for you, right? Like, or we say things like that. But when there's context, it usually sticks, right? Versus just do this or do that.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you shared, this isn't a question, but I really love that you shared that your wife chose to do everything herself. I've chosen to do that too. And that's so powerful.
100%. I didn't even think about that. You do
kids
that.
to see, what it takes to make a dinner, what it takes to clean up. I want them to see that journey. And we chose not to have a nanny. When I was pregnant, I said, I'm having a nanny for
we
sure.
had a nanny for a second, but
when I was sick, just because I couldn't pick up my baby for over 6 months, and it was all on his shoulders as a man. Like, I
was
had
juggling.
someone come in. Just
You know how that is.
He was helping me out. Thank God. But
well, you know what, that really speaks to this point. In episode 225 of your podcast, the Smart Passive Income podcast, you interview your kids and your wife.
I did.
And it's a great episode. Our kids,
I need to do that again.
Our son made us listen to it twice. So we, or 3 times actually. We listened to it 3 times because he just wanted to hear your son and daughter speak. Yeah. But I love the part where you're interviewing your wife, and you guys are kind of talking about time management. And it's so true. We start businesses so that we can have free time with our families. And it sounded like you were going through an issue that everybody goes through at the beginning of your business, that you're spending so much time on your business trying to build this business that you realize that
it's supposed to give you freedom.
It's giving you no freedom. You're spending all your time on your business. And how did that, working through that issue, how did you work that out? And how did working through that issue help you guys?
I mean, it's all about communication and just honesty and feeling that you can share something that maybe the other person initially won't agree with without any consequence. Like, the more open and honest we can be with each other, the more information we have from each other's perspectives. And now learning even more about the Enneagram and what that means, is because it's sort of like a strength finders test, but more about, like, why this person does the certain things that they do and what the reason is for those things. Like, it just goes pretty deep, but it's just communication.
Can you give a little summary though for our audience that doesn't know what that is? I'd love to.
So if you look up Enneagram, there's a lot of books about it. You can take tests online that basically, and a lot of people have different feelings about these things, like, oh, I don't want to be labeled, or I don't want to, like, have sort of like a number on me. But it's essentially, you end up with a number that represents who you are and why you do the things you do. There's a good version of that number, there's a bad version of that number, and there's a lot of things in between. And you get to essentially learn what motivates a person. And different people are motivated by different things. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means when I can understand why, when April is put in a situation where she's in front of a large group of people, why she feels uncomfortable, I no longer am going, why aren't you, like, just talking to everybody like everybody else is? But I can understand that that's not who she is. She'd much rather have a room on the side with just her close friends And I have to respect that because that's who she is, right? And at the
Yeah.
same time, she now can understand why I need to get in front of thousands of people on a stage and talk about my business and myself. It's not because I'm big-headed and cocky. It's because that's how I feel like I can serve the most people. And that then in turn helps the business too. So it's a really interesting thing. A lot of couples use it for relationships. A lot of businesses use it to understand teams. For example, the person who is an 8 is usually a challenger. And there's certain motivations perhaps from their history about why they challenge certain things. And that is really useful to know, especially if you have a team, because then you can understand that, okay, this person wants to do things differently, not because they want to be just annoying to everybody, but that's how they think. They want to do things better than how things are, because there's always a way to break out of the norm to potentially improve things, right? And there's also the negative side of the challenger, which is just like, you're just loud and purposefully just trying to get attention for that reason. So, I mean, there's all different kinds of things, but it's a really interesting
That's a great tool.
thing. Yeah, the Enneagram, ENNE, and then the rest.
Can you give me an example of a moment where you and your wife were going through some issues with your business and where your business became, kind of that one problem that you guys were having?
So this was actually before we had kids, and I'm grateful this happened before we had kids, because if this wasn't fixed, I don't know what would have happened in terms of how the family dynamic would have been. So I remember this was at the time when I just started my entrepreneurial endeavor. So again, very excited. It's all I could think about. There's no turning it off. And I was in the living room with my wife, and we were having a conversation, and her mouth was moving. She was making words, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the next sales page or the email that I had to write or the customers I had to support, right? And she caught me like mid-conversation. She stopped talking and she said, "You're thinking about your business right now, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh, no,
That's so relatable.
I'm not."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Well, what was the last thing I said?" And I said, "You said I'm thinking about my business, aren't you?" And that's not what she wanted to hear. And the couch felt very comfortable that night, I guess. But the next day when we were okay, we had a conversation about what we can make sure to do so that that never happens again. Because she even brought up, I'm pregnant. What's going to happen when you're playing with your son and he's going through this thing and then you're thinking about something else? And I needed to hear that, right? I needed to hear that then, not just for April, but for the kids.
Right.
And for myself. So eventually what we ended up finding was I needed boundaries, right? The beauty of a 9-to-5 job is that at 5 o'clock, I can clock out, not just physically, but mentally from whatever I was doing during the day, right? And I can go home and fully engage. So I had to realize that I need to be fully engaged with my family when it's family time, just like I need to be fully engaged with work when it's work time. So there were 2 boundaries that were set. Number 1 was a time boundary. During these times, I know that this is sort of like time to work. And then after that time, no more. And then the other thing was a physical boundary, meaning a certain space in the apartment. And now it's this office that I'm sitting in right now in this house, where when I'm sitting in this chair or in these doors, I am in work mode. When I'm out of these doors, all the work related stuff, my laptop that has work related things, they stay in this room. So that when I'm out of the space, I'm also mentally out of the space too. And then I can be fully engaged with the kids. And now it's even at the point, to be honest, where I've taken that even further. I've actually scheduled in my calendar, my Google Calendar, when work is and when game time is with the family and when dinner time is with the family. I mean, it's not like to the minute, but I have blocks of time where it's like, this is family time. So that when I'm looking at my phone and I see the calendar, it's like family time, and that I'm, again, we got through that, but it took a little bit of a moment for me to realize how important that was.
It's so true.
That's intense.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you have to be intentional. That's what
You
I see in
have
that.
to
Like,
be.
I think I could be more intentional in that space, because I do try to block out time, but being all at home, you know, everybody at home, and
Yeah.
you have the same situation.
Yeah.
Those times seem to blend, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm done, so I'm going to go spend time with the family a little bit, but then, oh shoot, I'm being pulled away from work, but
It's a
dinner's starting.
struggle, but
Yeah, we're always trying to figure that out and trying to
Yeah.
do our best. I'm sure
It's
you are
hard,
too.
you know, and we're trying to demonstrate, again, lead by example. So if we're at the dinner table, no phones, right? Because that's when the kids are older and they get phones. They don't have phones yet. But we don't want them to go, well, but you did it,
Exactly.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
We don't want them
Yep.
to, we don't exactly. We don't want to be hypocritical, right? And so if we are practicing what we preach, then we have the grounds to stand tall and be firm with what we're saying.
Yeah, we become what we surround ourselves with. Hey, can you tell me what a day in your life looks like? And that could be with the kids and the business. You can share routines or
Sure.
rituals, whatever you have with the kids.
Now, is this pre-pandemic or during pandemic? Because
Maybe
Well,
do you want
everything's
to give an
changed,
example
right?
of
So
both?
we may never go back.
Hopefully we go back to normal,
Oh, I
but
know,
especially
please.
right now with pandemic. I mean, we got the kids running around, one sleeping. We're please don't wake up, you know.
But if they do, it's real life, right?
Yeah,
It's real life, and that's the cool thing about a podcast like this. Exactly. So let's talk about the pandemic, because that's what we're all in right now. And by the time people listen to this, even in the near future, it'll be something we can all remember. And I think it's important because there's lessons to be pulled, right?
Yes.
Life changes. And I think that when you have a kid, especially, I remember when me and April finally got Keoni to sleep at night. Like, it took forever to get him to just like have this nightly routine back when he was a baby. Yes. As soon as it was like, yeah, finally it's good, it's like, boom, his teeth come in and everything gets screwed up again, right? So it's like the moment you plan and try to get routine with something else happens. And here we are in the pandemic, and now the kids are at home learning virtually, literally in the next room over right now, although they may be close to being done with school today. It's just a weird situation. So you know what? We always tell ourselves, what does this make possible? Even if something goes wrong, what does this make possible? So the beauty of the pandemic is it's allowed us to slow down. I'm not traveling anymore. So we actually do have more family time. You know what? Every night after dinner, we're playing a board game. And that's been incredible and super fun, because we never really did that before. Right. And that's been something that has come about because, well, what else are we going to do? We can't even go anywhere, right? So we try to make the best of it. What else has happened? We now have a garden in the backyard, where each of the kids have their own garden bed that they're in charge of, where they can grow their vegetables. They can learn what it's like to actually survive. I mean, no, there's not enough food there to like literally survive if like everything went crazy, but you know, they're being sustainable. They're learning about where this food actually comes from, so that when they go to the grocery store now and see a carrot, they know exactly how that was made, and they know they could do it themselves if they wanted to, and they can now appreciate it even more because they know
the
that
kids must love it.
I love
that. Dude, they totally love it. Like they're literally just from garden to mouth sometimes, and I'm like, you got to watch that first, but
that's
so anyway, a daily sort of routine now is I wake up 7 a.m. in the morning, and nobody's up yet. Thankfully, the kids are going to get up in about a half hour typically. And I have a little bit of time to myself to do what I like to call my Miracle Morning routine. Miracle Morning is a book by Hal Elrod. And there's these things that you can do in the morning to help set yourself up for success. So I do a little bit of journaling. I write in my 5-minute journal the 3 things that I'm grateful for today. And I always start the day with just, okay, no matter what's happening in the world right now, what are 3 things that I can be grateful for? Because if I can start on a positive note, then at least I have something that I know I can be grateful for, even if I have a terrible day. So I start the day with that. And I also do 5 minutes of meditation just to kind of get myself mentally ready for the day, just to have some breathing room. And then I read typically while I'm having a coffee. And then I wait basically for the kids to come down. And at that point, I'm making them breakfast. April is usually still sleeping. I let her sleep in. And she usually starts the day at the time where the kids are right about ready to start to school, because then she goes on a run and then I go to work. And then work is just here in the office at home. And then usually when she comes back, she's getting the kids' lunches ready and stuff. And then I come out and, you know, we can have lunch together. Typically, that's really important to me. So I have blocked out on my calendar every day, the same hours that the kids are off from school, we all have lunch together, right? And then they're back in school in the afternoon. I'm back at work, maybe doing some interviews like I am doing literally at this moment. April's probably taking care of some stuff around the house because the kids are always making a mess. And then after work, you know, I'm done. And typically the kids and I, we try to get some exercise of some kind in, because that's been really hard to find. Kids aren't in any sports right now or anything like that. So, you know, we're usually either having Nerf battles in the backyard, or we're, skateboarding or something together, rollerblading, biking. And that usually takes us to around 4 p.m. And then 4 p.m., usually kids get a little TV time or iPad time or something like that. I'm usually just going down a 30-minute YouTube rabbit hole of some kind. April's chilling, reading her magazine or on some Instagram thing. And then I cook dinner, and I love cooking dinner. It's my favorite thing to do. Lately, we've actually been really enjoying #NotSponsored HelloFresh, where we, just to make sure, we get sent this box from HelloFresh. I mean, there's many companies that do that kind of thing. And me and my daughter will cook together. She loves to cook. And so we sort of like try to, like you said, like whatever their eyes are excited about, like let's help them with that, right? And my daughter loves baking, cooking. So we're like, hey, we can do this HelloFresh thing. We can cook together. And she helps out in every single meal. She's learning how to use a knife at 8 years old. Like, it's pretty awesome. And we've even enrolled her at one point into a baking camp over the summer, because again, like you said, she wants to do more of that. Let's help support that, right? Like let's lead her into that. And you know, if she stops, but it's up to her. And then usually after dinner, like I said, we play some games, cards, board games, whatever. And then the kids usually start getting to bed around 8 p.m., at which point, you know, April's usually cleaning up around cleaning up around the house. I'm cleaning up around my office during that time. We tuck the kids in. Me and April are downstairs. We're usually just chatting, right? We might watch a movie together or some Netflix, but just trying to decompress. There are moments, I will say, that where, you know, although I try to divide all those times between work and personal life, that it does blur every once in a while. It's not perfect.
Of course.
But if I get off track, or if I happen to go all in on work because I have something launching or something, I usually try to sort of have it balanced out on the other side, just so we can get back to the sort of normalcy if possible.
And when would you be creating? I know for you, it's probably a lot. It's like a whole day for us if we're creating a small piece of content, but like you probably just turn on the screen and just start talking, right? Like, I'm sure it's that easy for you. But
yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, I mean, I've been
that?
going live on YouTube every day at 9 a.m. So literally, whenever you're trying to create content over and over again, the best suggestion I can offer to you is, if this were easy, what would it look like? Just do that, right? So for me, if I'm going live every day, I literally have the setup where I can just go push a button and I'm live. I don't take down the lights. All the lights are already set up. The camera's the way it's supposed to be. Everything's ready for me the night before. It's all ready to go. When I'm creating podcast episodes, I actually have a specific day of the week, Tuesday, where that's my recording day. So I batch process. I can get 4 or 5 episodes done during that day. I don't schedule any meetings, any calls or nothing. That's my day to podcast. I can wake up knowing that that's what I'm going to do. Any calls that are scheduled for a podcast interview are on that day as well. And I bust it out. And then the team handles most of the other things that happen afterwards. And so that's kind of cool, because maybe next Tuesday, I'm just not feeling it, or I'm sick or whatever, because I recorded 5 the week before. I'm not struggling to worry about next week's content, because that was actually recorded, you know, over a month ago.
Right.
And that's really helpful as far as just not feeling the weight of that impending deadline that's coming next week for a show, you know?
Oh, I love this, Pat. Thank you for being so transparent with us. Just a few more questions. I love, like, you're exactly the type of person we want on this show speaking about these things, because you're this big entrepreneur, like, you know, who's does so much, and seemingly from the outside looking in, you've written all these books. What is your process? Like, when do you spend time, like when you know you have to write a book? How does, because that's got to be a big endeavor. Where are you carving that time out? Where's the give and take? And we should mention that, you know, Superfans is one of our favorite books, because it applies to our business. You know, it's like, we love that book. I love the audio version, because you really bring a lot of passion to reading that book. But when you have a few other books, Will It Fly? I just discovered, I didn't see this book before, How to Be Better at Almost Everything. I downloaded it.
That's actually not my book, just so you know. There's another Pat Flynn out there.
Is there?
Never mind.
There's another Pat Flynn. No, his book's good.
Well,
His
I
book's
didn't.
good.
I was wondering why I'd never heard of it. I was like, oh, here's
And that's why.
Now we knew
Pat Flynn.
everything.
Yeah, I was like, wow. I told her, I said, I'd never heard of this book before. He's got another book out. I didn't know when it came out. I paid for it, so this guy's gonna be very happy that I bought his book.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And but
Should do something
no,
about that.
I'm just wondering how, where do you carve out time to make that happen? Because I know it's an endeavor. It probably takes a lot out of you. There's probably a lot of inner thought that it takes when you're writing a book. We haven't written a book
Totally.
yet, but when do you carve that time? Where's the give and take there?
Yeah, writing a book was very difficult. It's one of the hardest things that you'll hear a lot of people say they've ever done, and I can attest to that. So when I wanted to write Will It Fly, this was back in 2014, I thought I could just, open up my computer and start writing.
Yeah.
Nope. It took a little bit more than that. I have realized that the more I can understand about who this book is for first, and then get a really good outline about the journey I want to take a reader on from start to finish, the more likely it is I'm able to start pouring into those pages. So it took me a while to realize that. And so eventually I got a really good outline that was actually something that I can just basically break apart and write each part like a blog post. So treating the blog like a bunch of different blog posts mentally for me as a blogger who started in business in 2008 was much easier for me than just like this giant thing that sounded like this. How many words do I need to write? 40,000 words? Like
Right.
I don't even know where to start. So like with anything, taking a big goal, chopping it up into a bunch of little micro goals, in this case, chapters, and just working on them one at a time. Right. So that was really helpful. To be honest, though, I did get a coach in 2015 to help me write, because for me with anything, if I'm trying to do something new that I've never done before, why try to figure it out myself when there's millions of other people who've probably done this before me, who have already made the mistakes, who already know the best process, who I could even pay and get so much more time back as a result.
Right.
So I hired a coach. His name's Azul, and he, like we do with our kids, he asked me just a ton of questions, and I hated it because I was just like, can you just tell me what to do? Right. But like any good coach, he'll get you to figure out what to do by asking you those right questions. I'm very grateful for Azul because he was able to get this thing out of me that became this book that has now served tens of thousands of people and has helped people start several different businesses.
Yes.
And has also helped our business too. So that's Will It Fly. And I found the time to write in the morning. Literally. I had two younger kids at the time. So my kids were at this time 5 and 2 or 5 and 3.
Yeah, 5 and 2. Yeah.
So quite young. And if they were up, there was no time away from them, right?
Yeah.
They were not in school yet, but half days at school, maybe, but they were just everywhere all the time. So the only time I was going to get was going to be in the morning. And this is very similar to some financial advice I heard before. If you want to build like a nest egg, right? Pay yourself first and then pay your bills and then pay all the things, right? To everything else. So that's what I was doing with my time. I was paying myself first in the world of writing a book. And so I would have basically an hour every morning to write. And knowing that as soon as the kids got up, that was time to be done, I made sure that I was very efficient and that I could understand what I was getting into before I saw that blinking cursor on my Word document. So I kind of, because of the outline, already knew where I was going. I got a lot of help from my coach, and I had that time in the morning, and bit by bit, it just started coming together. I started to write more, the more I built a habit out of it. And eventually it ended up completing itself. Now, Superfans was a different story because I literally had no time because I have this business to run and the business has grown so much more. I have a team and many more things to do.
Yeah.
So I hired a company that I was hoping was going to write this for me. Now, I was not a big fan of just hiring a ghostwriter and saying, hey, this is what I believe, go. This company that I hired had done a interview process with me for 3 months, pulling out all the stories and the outline and everything. And it was like, okay, well, at least the words on the page will be mine. I'm just not the one typing it.
Right.
And I remember we worked for 3 months and they're a great company. I get the first sort of chapter back because they want to get the styling right of my voicing and they want to make sure it is me. And I read it and I was like, this is not me at all. Like this sounds nothing like me. And they're like, oh, are you sure? Because you said it this way. And I was like, yeah, but that's not, I would never say this, or I would never say that. So they felt bad because that was like $20,000 that wasn't going to go anywhere. And they're like, okay, we're going to do this again. We're going to get it right for you. So another 2 months of interviews, another different person writing the manuscript. got the second chapter, because maybe it was the first chapter that was the issue. Got the second chapter. I read it. It's nothing like me again.
Same thing.
So I was like, okay, I guess this is a sign that this book is not going to work out. I just don't have the time to do it. But then something started happening in the social media sphere. People who had built their brands and businesses on Facebook, on Instagram, on all these different platforms were getting sideswiped by algorithm changes, by changes in their policies. Businesses were dying overnight. And it's because they had built their platform on another person's sandbox.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I have to write this book, because once you have super fans, they'll go with you no matter where you're at.
They will. They'll die on a sword for you.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about the trolls.
Exactly. They will go to at bat for you for sure. And so I was like, I have to do this. So November 2018 came around. And in November, there's this thing called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writers Month. It's this thing that's been happening for years now, where writers challenge themselves to write an entire book in the month of November. This happens every year. Anybody can join it. It's free. It's just sort of a self-driven challenge. And so I joined it. And I was able to finish Superfans by carving out all my time for just that month. And I was able to, actually didn't finish in November. I finished on my birthday on December 6th. And it was a great birthday present to put the final word on this.
Oh,
and it was the first draft, right? It was messy. But once you have that first draft, you at least now have a foundation to work off of, to mix and match and, have people fill in the holes and stuff. So that book was written in a month, although it was like, a whole year of planning and trial and error beforehand. But to help me hold myself accountable, I actually was on Instagram every day sharing how many words I wrote. And I was actually challenging people to guess how many words I was going to write every day. Because then if I didn't show up, they'd be like, hey, you're a failure. At least that's how I was positioning it. And it was funny because the first day I mentioned this challenge, I was like, hey guys, guess how many words I'm going to write tomorrow? I'm starting this 30-day challenge for NaNoWriMo. And they were like, you're going to write 2,500 words, 3,000. You're going to do it, Pat. This is awesome. I was getting super motivated. I was like, yes, this is great. I got the team behind me as well. And the first day, I wrote, I think, 220 words.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my God, I got to share this with everybody. And so I share it and they're like, it's okay, you got this. And I was like, how many words am I going to write tomorrow? And they're like, 250, 300. They're like, okay, I've sort of like set that bar lower now. And yeah, they were right. 300. Then the next day, 400. Then the next day, 600. Then one day I had like a 2,000. Then went back down. And I was like writing 3,000 or 4,000 words a day because I finally had that momentum. And with anything, physics is at play. Like an object at rest tends to stay at rest. It had been so long since I had actually written anything. So it just took some time for the thing to get in motion. And of course, an object in motion tends to stay in motion.
Right.
Speaking of December, the first breath of your beautiful baby boy was Christmas Eve.
Yes.
And you were an entrepreneur. How did your life change? I mean, I know it's the best thing ever, but what was going through your mind when you're thinking about your entrepreneurial life? Like, can you tell us about that?
I mean, a lot of things for sure. I mean, this, it changes everything.
Yes.
Literally overnight, really.
Yep.
And as much as I wanted to enjoy it, I was scared.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I was scared because of the following reason. We didn't have insurance. And that kind of sucks, that like the fact that you don't have this very adult thing called insurance affects the thing that should be the most joyous day of your life.
Yeah.
And to give you a little bit of a backstory, when I got laid off, of course, benefits are a part of what you get when you work somewhere. And when you stop working somewhere, you could potentially pay for this thing called Cobra, which is like a very expensive version of the insurance that you had, but it's very expensive. And I was just starting my business. I didn't know where things were going when we found out we were pregnant. So the thing that happened was we tried to get insurance. And at the time, pregnancy was a pre-existing condition. And as a result of that, we couldn't get insurance because obviously they knew they were going to have to pay for things that were inevitable.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? But then we found a loophole. As stressed out as I was, we found a loophole. A lot of loopholes out there. And the loophole was I could hire April as an employee. And if she's an employee, she can be on the business health insurance which wouldn't count pregnancy as a pre-existing condition. And we'd be able to get through at least like the birth, which, and if there's any complications, because, you know, every day in the hospital is like $14,000 or something insane like that. Yeah. So again, I have this thing in my mind that we're like, you know, we're going to be okay. And he was due January 15th. The insurance was supposed to go up January 1st for the new year. And as you have already pointed out, he was not born in January. My wife's water broke on December 23rd. And as we were rushing to the hospital, all like almost a month early, by the way. And as we all know, babies that are born that early could potentially have some problems. Yeah. So I was like, this baby could bankrupt us. And so as much as I was trying to feel joy, I was also very, very scared that this is what was going to put us back on the streets, or, you know, at least back in our parents' home or whatever. And so that was tough. That was really tough. But I'm very grateful that, first of all, he was born healthy. He was only in the hospital for 2 days, although we still had to pay $28,000 out of pocket for that. And I'm very grateful that the business was doing really well. And the fact that it was still running, even though I was at the hospital, it was still making sales in this online world. It saved us. It absolutely saved us. And when we had our second born, obviously, we learned from our mistakes and we had insurance. But those are the things that you don't really think about or know about when you're on your own. Just insurance. Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, you figure them out as you go, right?
That's so encouraging for people going through that now.
Oh yeah, so many people going through so much right now. We got to ask this for our listeners. What, you know, there's people that have had to pivot, that people lost their jobs or their business had to close down, or it's not working now.
And they have this list of ideas that they're exploring, and they don't know, will it fly?
Yeah,
right. Without giving away too much about the book, what tips do you have? Because people are facing this challenge right now, and
for you,
you guys have to get this book, but let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people right now who I know are using this opportunity to start something new.
Yes.
And I know that, like my story, there's going to be many more stories like it in the future as a result of this pandemic. As terrible as it is, as sad as it is, there's going to be so many great, amazing things that have happened for some who do take advantage of this opportunity. So the fact that you might be even just in the exploration phase is very encouraging, because that means you're at least peeking your head over the fence to see what else is there for yourself. And I think that's sort of step number one, right? Believing that that could actually happen is a must. Just the belief of it, because as Henry Ford said, if you, or whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Like if you don't believe that this is going to happen, it's not going to happen, because you're not going to do the things that are required to make it happen, right? But at least if you have this belief, you can actually start to, you know, make headway on it. Now, if you do have some certain ideas, I would definitely lay them out on the table, see what's in front of you, so that you can start exploring each of them as a potential opportunity. And the big thing you have to realize is this, and this is something that encouraged me when I started too, is that to start, you just need to help one person. Like, you might have a specialty or a superpower or something that can help another person who doesn't have that, or you see a person in need and you can help them achieve something or help them make something more convenient. That's really all businesses are, things that help people in some way, shape, or form. That's all it is. They solve problems, right? And there's a lot of people who have a lot of problems today. They existed even before the pandemic, and there's going to be new problems arising. There's always new opportunities. I think Richard Branson said, business opportunities are like buses. As soon as one comes by and leaves, there comes another one, right? So they're always coming. It's just, do you want to step on that bus, or do you want to step on this bus, right? And Will It Fly will definitely help you be able to vet each of these ideas sort of one by one. But again, to bring it out and zoom out a little bit, you don't need to create the next Uber. You don't need to create the next, fidget spinner or anything huge, right? I know some people who literally have 20 clients and they're making over 6 figures a year, living comfortably, just because they're offering their specialty. I don't know, website design, or their singing lessons, or whatever. Right? Yeah. Just 20 people. And to give you a little bit more inspiration, there was this article written in 2006 by a man named Kevin Kelly. It's called 1,000 True Fans. And this is the essential inspiration of what became Superfans for me.
Right.
Because the thesis here is that you don't need a blockbuster hit. You don't need 1 million fans. You don't need 1 million subscribers. You just need 1,000 true fans. Because when you really think about it, a true fan being somebody who will show up for you no matter what. who will, if you're a musician, they're going to drive 8 hours to hear your set and wait for you backstage just to get a selfie. Like those are the kinds of fans, right? And you can have fans with anything. I had fans from people who took my exam guide. Like it's crazy. But if you have 1,000 fans, true fans, and they pay you $100 a year for your art, your creative, your service, your coaching, whatever it might be, just 1,000 people for $100. That's not much at all that a fan would spend. I mean, I spend way more on Back to the Future stuff. I mean, trust me.
Me too.
But that's less than $10 a month, right? 1,000 people times $100 is $100,000 business. You're already at 6 figures by just focusing on trying to get 1,000 people. And when you really break it down, that's a fan a day for less than 3 years. I mean, people go 20, 30, 40 years of their life and never even get to 6 figures. And in just 3 short years, 1 fan a day, and likely when you make these fans and you help people, guess what? Referrals happen. Word of mouth happens.
Yes.
They start talking about how you've helped them. Most people who are like each other hang out with each other and they tell their friends too, and you can grow even more exponentially, and it'll probably take less than 3 years.
Absolutely.
Right? So hopefully that gives you some inspiration in terms of where to start. Find a problem, an inconvenience, a group of people who needs help, show up and just try to serve one person, because that service of one person will tell you what that person needs, what they don't like, what they do like, how to speak to them, what they need help with exactly, how you might be able to serve them. And now you've had one case study, and that then unlocks in your brain your ability to help even more people.
We love that. That's so good. You thank you so much for coming on our show.
You're welcome.
I have to ask, we always ask all of our guests this. If you know, we all have a certain time period that we get to be with our kids. And if you had to leave one piece of advice for your kids, what would that be? What would be that one piece of advice that would help them go on with their life, to build their life?
I would say try to help and serve as many people as possible, because nobody's ever gotten poor by helping other people get what they want. And you can do this with people in your life right now, from your teachers to whoever, to larger groups of people in the world later when you start to learn how to scale your message. But I would not be where I'm at if it weren't for the people who are in my life, and the people in my life who have helped me most. I know that I've helped them too. And you got to do that now without asking for anything in return. If you are asking for something before first helping that person, you're essentially digging your well while thirsty. It's too late. Imagine reaching out to somebody for the first time who you haven't spoken to in a while, and you're doing that because you have a new book to sell. Well, what happened? You're only reaching out to me because you need something, versus consistently seeing what you might do to help others. And you might have something tragic happen in your life, and you know what? You're now going to have advocates who are going to help you because you've already spent the time digging your well before you were thirsty. Absolutely. So dig your well now before you need that water.
That's such great advice.
Yeah,
one book you'd leave for your kids, if
obviously yours, or
besides
that, or the Bible.
Yeah, a book you'd leave for your kids, help them through.
Yeah, on a similar vein, and where I learned a lot of this from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
My favorite book, absolutely, hands down. I love that book. Thank you so much, Pat, for coming on our show. It was a great show.
And your soul, like I'm so grateful.
Yeah, give all the kids and the family a high five, and thank them for allowing us to steal you for the hour.
Amen.
I will. Thank you. They just finished school. I hear one playing the piano, so I'm going to go hang out.
Amazing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pat.
Right.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. We love you.